Welcome to Downshift. My name is Matt, and this is the BMW i7. It's BMW's first ever full-size, full luxury, full electric sedan. And last week we covered all of the coolest things going on with this car. But today we've finished our week with the car, and we're gonna hit the highlights, the best and the rest, starting with the rest. First thing that we're going to talk about is price. Now, on the face of it, the BMW i7 starts at $120,000, whereas the Mercedes EQS can be had starting at $104,000. So if you're just looking for the cheapest luxury EV, the Mercedes will technically get you there. However, that cheaper EQS 450 isn't a competitor on power, and it doesn't even offer dual motor all-wheel drive at that price point. For the true competitor for Mercedes-Benz, you're looking at the EQS 580, which starts at $126,000, so another $7,000 more than the i7 here. So this actually ends up being a bit cheaper, it's bigger, and it's better, but we'll cover that as we go through the video. Number two is the architecture. This one also has a little bit of a star next to it in terms of general EV stuff on paper. It's actually really good. You get about a 320-mile range, you get dual motor all-wheel drive as standard. It's really not bad. The thing that I'm talking about here is the 400-volt architecture, which results in charging speeds being a little bit slower than in some other EVs out there. The i7 still charges about 80 miles per 10 minutes, but things like the Ioniq 5 and the EV6 are charging almost 10 to 80% in under 20 minutes. So objectively, this is still pretty good. If you can't charge at home, then just something to be aware of. But I would guess that everyone that has the money for an i7 probably has access to a charger where they live. And the other side of that coin is just because other things say they can charge a certain speed doesn't mean they will in the real world. Make sure you watch our commuting video where we did over 100 miles a day in this thing to test the range. Foot on the brake. I love that. But in the interest of being thorough, as with any car, there's a series of little nitpicks of things that aren't quite perfect here. For one, and I think the most commonly, the doors aren't always perfect. I'll say I used them a lot this week, and once or twice a day they would not quite open all the way, or they would do maybe like a weird thing, but generally speaking, over 90% of the time they work and they're really cool. And number two is the digital rear view mirror. It's an issue because it doesn't have one, and with the TV down or even the rear sun blind up, you can't really see anything through the back of the car. And then this one might be a little bit specific to me, but the cup holders up front here aren't heated or cooled, which is something that you get in something like a Mercedes GLS or something of kind of a similar price point and tier level. And I guess the third and fourth thing is that it's not exactly the most conventionally attractive vehicle, but I do think it is better looking than the EQS. But really, those are the only things that I could ding this car on. So that means there's a lot of cool stuff going on here, so let's talk about that. Number one, and my favorite thing, is the drive. This is exactly what I'm wanting for the future of luxury cars. The EV thing here just puts it on the right level. Even with the crazy TV and the rear lounge seat, the driving experience here is my favorite thing. There is not a sharp edge to be found anywhere on this car. The power is plentiful and potent. 535 horsepower, 550 pound-feet of torque, 0 to 60 in under 5 seconds. This is the base output, by the way. It's not slow. The ride here, of course, air suspension. We have active comfort ride here, and this suppleness rivals that Rolls-Royce Ghost that we were in a couple weeks ago. Effortless is the word that springs to mind. The quietness and refinement and civility of the cabin here, also Rolls-Royce level. You've also got a rear steer module in the back to make this thing a little bit more darty and maneuverable and easier to manipulate in smaller, lower speed situations. Again, I'll use the same word that I used to describe the Ghost experience, and that's effortless behind the wheel. And I think that comparison tells you everything you need to know about what it's like behind the wheel of this i7. And number two, we have to talk about this TV. Obviously, this is one of the most game-changing features that I've seen in a new car in probably the last decade. And the other crazy thing is you can have this TV for under $5,000 as an option. Sure, that's a lot of money objectively, but when you think about it, the paint here is $5,000, and I'd much rather have the TV than a flat black paint. The TV here is a 31-incher packing 8K resolution, which is just insane. It's built in with Amazon Fire TV, but you can plug in an HDMI to run things like an Xbox or your laptop or whatever you want. And once you're all loaded up and connected, use the screens integrated into the doors to select theater mode and watch as all the shades go up and you can enjoy your content. Honestly, it's such a cool feature and absolutely worth the money. And I know we just kind of touched on it, but we have to talk about the doors themselves. On the inside, they're cladded with modern art for speaker covers, and the speakers underneath light up different colors depending on your ambient light and your drive mode. And you have command screens to control everything from your climate, your seat position, heating, cooling, massage, the music, and the TV. And then there's the way to open the doors. You have 3 different ways to open them, at least. The first is the fully automatic way, then there's an electronic release to open them normally underneath, and then there's the mechanical fail-safe in case you ever run out of battery. And that's just the inside. The outside of the doors are interesting too. You've got a normal handle for normal operation, but you also have the button for the automatic open. And the automatic open uses the sensors on the handle and rocker panels to keep from bumping you or other cars. And a couple months back this past spring, we spent some time in the Rolls-Royce Ghost, which also had automatic doors. And to be honest, I've found these more organic and natural to interact with. Not bad. Number 4, I want to talk about driver assist. I know I said the driving experience here is my favorite thing, but part of that, what we didn't talk about earlier, is the driver assistance suite. The system here is incredibly robust. It's almost like a Super Cruise from GM, where you can go full hands-off in certain situations, and the car will just change lanes with just the flick of an indicator here. And it does it quickly and more purposefully than really anything that I've tested, even including Super Cruise. The only thing is that the driver attention monitor is very strict, and it will ding at you pretty much any lapse of attention that you do. I guess that's ultimately a good thing, but just trying to get a clip of the system working for the sake of this video was a little bit tough. And then we're going to talk about the cameras. Of course, you have great 360 and backup cameras, as you would expect from a flagship BMW. But this thing takes it a step further. First, you have the front camera operating with your augmented reality navigation to show you exactly where to turn within your gauge cluster. Then there's the cabin camera, which is a $100 option and isn't really used to monitor babies, but to take selfies of you and your friends. It even has a smile trigger, which is insane. Plus, you can access the interior camera in your BMW app to see if anyone's breaking in, and you can record them as well. And of course, there's a bunch of cameras on the outside of the car that also function as drive recorders, so if you're ever involved in an accident or an incident, you have video proof of how not at fault you were. And then we have to talk about the crystal. Now, we've seen crystal in a number of places over BMW's lineup over the last couple of years, but nowhere in BMW's lineup is there more crystal than in the i7. There's crystal for your start-stop button, your scroll wheel for your volume, your gear selector tab, your iDrive wheel, your seat controls on the door, and rimming the entire dash. And your headlights are crystal as well, which is just an unbelievable flex. And that crystal rimming the dash is actually really cool because they've integrated buttons and lighting and all sorts of features into it that you can interact with and control stuff like your automatic doors and other things like that. And now we're in the back to talk about general luxuries, as you'd expect. Not only is the build super solid and the materials exquisite and the design is stunning, but it's all integrated really well with all the luxury features you'd expect. Heated and cooled seats everywhere, massage seats everywhere. The right rear passenger even gets their own reclining lounge seat thing for full stretch out. And you've even got pillows in the headrest so you can legitimately take a nap. And that's not even mentioning the TV or the massive panoramic sunroof embedded with LED strips or any of the other crazy stuff. And 7th and finally, I love the different modes and sounds that you get here. I know we talked about the driving experience already twice, but there's a couple other interesting things going on here that I think are worth mentioning. First is the drive modes. You have normal ones like Comfort, Sport, Eco, or Efficient, or whatever they're calling it, but it's basically the same thing. But then you have weird ones like Expressive and Relax and Theater and Digital Art. And each mode, more or less, has its own sound profile when you get into power. And there seems to be shift paddles on the steering wheel here, but there's only one and it's only on the left-hand side. And it's actually a boost paddle. So it's gonna give you sport mode power and performance for 10 seconds at a time. And this is one of my favorite things because this is, at its core, an uber luxury cruiser. I want the waft. I want all of the suppleness of the suspension. I don't want the rough sport edge. I'm not really pushing it, but every once in a while, I want to put my foot down and I want all the power. So the boost paddle is a perfect thing here. That's what I love to see. This is a thoughtful feature. So that's the best and the rest of the BMW i7. It took me approximately 24 hours to become unequivocally obsessed with this thing. It's not perfect, but it is incredibly good and really, really special. So thanks to BMW for letting us have a go. Thank you to you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.